Who's ready for mostly movies that people don't like? Hi, my name's Justin DeClue, and you're watching the Best New Movie Show, where I go through 3 movies that were released this week and pick the best one. This week I'm going to be talking about Minari, The United States versus Billie Holiday, and Tom and Jerry. So let's start with Minari. Look, you know this movie is good if you've heard anything about it. It's about a South Korean family that moves to the United States, with the father, played by Steven Yeun, trying to start a farm and running into troubles. Now, when you hear that plot description, you think that the trouble that they're going to run into is racism. And while that probably did happen in real life, seeing how it is based on the life of the filmmaker, what we see is more of a culture clash with how this family gets used to living in a completely different place than it is a family trying to act normal and running into an outside force. Everybody in this cast is excellent, from the young kid who gets to play a bastard, not a precocious little annoying bastard, which is usually how these movies play out, to the grandmother, played by a famous South Korean actor who gives an excellent performance in a role that when you see the trailer you think you'll know, but it actually allows to go in a different place. Or even the 2 leads, which are great because it allows to see 2 different perspectives, the mother and father in the family, but also get you sympathetic on both their sides. You understand where they're coming from. You may land on one or the other, but it's not something that demonizes someone or some choice. That's why Minari is a great movie. I feel like it's going to sweep the awards. South Korea continues its domination. You need to see this. It's not what you think it is based on the trailers. It's a little bit more subdued than that, and I think that anybody who checks it out will definitely enjoy it. Okay, moving on, we have The United States versus Billie Holiday, another Billie Holiday biopic. I say another because there was one quite a while ago, The Lady Sings the Blues, directed by Canada's own Sidney J. Furie, but it makes sense that they would return to this very ripe subject. And instead of doing something fresh and new, man, it's directed by Lee Daniels, and it feels like just every other biopic ever made. Now, I should say that this film has an excellent performance by Andra Day in the role of Billie Holiday. Unfortunately, everything else surrounding her, and by that I mean mostly the structure, the style, the presentation of the film, is just not good. It is TV movie-ish, it has no dramatic tension at all, it is the last 10 years of Billie Holiday's life, and it makes the biggest biopic mistake, is it tries to do too much stuff. The problem is that unless you impose a structure on the story of someone's life, it will not make a satisfying movie experience. You just cannot give the viewer only the highlights, and that's what Lee Daniels does here. Now, he tries to pull out a few tricks. The film is shot on 35mm, and I noticed right away, but then he shoots the film in the most TV-like fashion, seemingly multiple cameras capturing a scene. There is no vision behind any of this. The whole United States part is an element of the plot, but it doesn't get connected with the character of Billie Holiday enough. So essentially what you just have is Billie Holiday suffering through most of the film, and then at the end, she died, like she did in real life. There is not a big dramatic finale. There is not a way to get involved in it. It just plays like a Wikipedia article, which is the case of the worst biopic. Now, look, I haven't made any biopics, but the ones that I prefer are the ones that, if you want to tell somebody's life, you need to pick either a specific event or you structure it simply around something. You cannot do a best of hits, and that's exactly what this film does. So finally, we have the Tom and Jerry movie. I should start right from the get-go. I am not a huge fan of Tom and Jerry. I know of them. I have seen cartoons of them. They were not my favorites as a kid. I was a Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck kind of guy. But, you know, I like it when a cartoon mouse bonks a cartoon cat on the head. And when I saw the trailer for this, I actually kind of got a little bit excited because it looked like they were taking 2D elements and having them interact in the real world. Now, the plot about a young woman played by Chloe Grace Moretz getting a job at a hotel and then hijinks ensue, I don't need any of that. I just want to see the cat and mouse get into chaos. But then when I watched the movie, it did not take me long to realize these are not 2D characters. These are 3D modeled characters made to look like 2D. You may say, well, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that not only is it not like the original Tom and Jerry, so it doesn't have that feel at all, it creates also an uncanny valley because they try their best to make them like 2D characters. The thing with 3D models is that oftentimes they're stiff because of the way that you move them, but these squash and stretch just like classic cartoon characters. But there is still that uncanny valley when you watch it, of that you see the 3D models, and it took me right out of it. Now, The movie is not good. It is a Tim Story directed film, the guy who gave us such classics as Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. So I didn't have much faith when I saw his name, but you know, it's Tom and Jerry, it's cartoon, it should not be that hard, but it comes off not good. It has seemingly parts that should be good. Like, it has some of the classic stuff, but it never treats it right, gives it the time to develop. It's a lot of chaos signifying nothing. Clearly, some people that worked on this were big fans of Tom and Jerry. There are tons of ancillary characters that show up throughout the movie, but because the plot is so disconnected, there is a distinct lack of Tom and Jerry in the movie, and there's also modern day elements that just smack you in the face. You want some singing pigeons? That it just never worked for me, and as it played, because I was seeing elements that I recognized, it just frustrated me because it wasn't delivering them in a satisfying way. Now, you may argue, is there a way to do a Tom and Jerry movie because they are such a base idea? And I would say, yeah. I mean, just look at the Three Stooges film, which took something very simple and was able to develop it into something that, in my opinion, worked. Yes, I'm talking about the Farrelly Brothers Three Stooges film, which is very underrated and you should check out. Or it could have been a deconstruction of the idea of Tom and Jerry while still being a Tom and Jerry thing, which is, for example, something like Chris Lord and Phil Miller would have done. But instead, it's none of that. It just feels kind of cheap, made by people who clearly love the characters but can't go all out or have a great idea of how to approach it, so it just ends up being nothing. The whole film is about making sure that some millionaire people have a good wedding. That's the climax of the picture. What were they thinking? Probably not very much. I just wanted to get that Tom and Jerry IP out there. So I would not recommend this to families or even Tom and Jerry fans. You're better off just going and throwing in that like classic MGM DVD instead. I think at the end of the day, this will just frustrate you more than anything. If you want to watch a movie that does have its failures, but actually treats the cartoon characters well, I would recommend checking out Looney Tunes Back in Action, because that movie is great. And Joe Dante, while he had a lot of difficulties making it, he does get in some of that classic Warner Brothers magic, while this Tom and Jerry film has none of it. So out of all the episodes that I've done, picking the best movie in this one is easiest. It's obviously Minari. Go watch Minari. It is great. Do not check out just another rope biopic that is over 2 hours long in the United States versus Billie Holiday, nor the Tom and Jerry movie, because it is bad. Do not check it out. So that's it for me. I do this show every Saturday, so please make sure to subscribe because it will pop up every Saturday to let you know which is this week's best movie. Also, make sure to check me out on a number of podcasts that I host almost every week, including The Important Cinema Club, Bay Street Video, No Such Thing as a Bad Movie, and the Star Wars Podcast. You can find all of the links below, and remember again to subscribe, and I will see you next week with the best movie.